It stands on the plateau as a monument not to time, but to the defiance of it, a geometric intrusion upon the soft, Aeolian curves of the desert. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for all its familiarity, remains an object of profound physical contradiction. Its mass, an estimated 6 million tons, settles the limestone bedrock beneath it with an authority that has outlasted empires, religions, and the very languages of the men who have measured it. It is a weight that speaks of permanence, a gravitational anchor pinning the present moment to a past so deep it has become mythological. From a distance, it appears as a simple shape, a platonic solid rendered in stone, its four triangular faces meeting at an apex that once gleamed with electrum, a beacon catching the first and last light of the sun. This distant view, however, is a simplification, a trick of scale that belies the fractal complexity of its construction. To approach it is to witness the dissolution of the whole into its constituent parts, 2.5 million blocks of limestone and granite, each a testament to a logistical and engineering effort that strains the explanatory power of historical models. The base, covering 13 acres, is a near-perfect square, its sides aligned to the cardinal directions with a precision that modern surveying techniques would find challenging, an alignment not to the magnetic pole of the present but to a true, celestial north. This fact alone suggests a knowledge of geodetics, of the planet's rotational axis, that feels anachronistic, an echo of a more sophisticated understanding resonating in a pre-industrial age. The exterior, weathered by millennia of sun and scouring winds, presents a coarse, stepped appearance, the legacy of the loss of its original polished Tura limestone casing. These casing stones, of which only a few remain at the base, were set with joints so fine that a razor's edge could not be inserted between them, creating a seamless, brilliant white facade that would have reflected the desert light with blinding intensity. It would have appeared not as a structure of stone, but as a solid object of pure light and shadow, its form shifting with the diurnal arc of the sun. Yet, it is within the dark, silent interior that the true anomaly resides. The passages are narrow, unforgivingly precise, angled with an intentionality that suggests purpose beyond mere transit. The descending passage plunges into the bedrock at an angle of 26 degrees, a vector aimed not at any subterranean chamber of significance, but at a point in the northern sky, tracking the circumpolar stars across the slow gyration of planetary precession. Within the superstructure, the ascending passage and the grand gallery rise into the heart of the mass, their walls and ceilings constructed of monolithic stones fitted with a joinery that seems more suited to cabinetry than to masonry on this cyclopean scale. The grand gallery itself is a corbelled vault of breathtaking execution, a space whose acoustic properties are as remarkable as its architecture, a chamber that seems designed to channel and amplify sound, or perhaps other, more subtle forms of energy. At its terminus lies the so-called King's Chamber, a stark, rectilinear room built entirely of massive, red Aswan granite blocks, some weighing over 70 tons, lifted 200 feet above the desert floor. Here, the precision is absolute. The walls are flat, the corners are true, and the entire structure is isolated from the main limestone body of the pyramid by a series of stress-relieving chambers above it, a sophisticated engineering solution to the immense pressure of the stone overhead. It is here, in this silent, granite heart, that the mystery deepens from a question of construction to a question of function. The empty granite coffer within the chamber, often assumed to be a sarcophagus, is itself an object of extraordinary craftsmanship, carved from a single block of granite with tools that left behind no evidence of their work. It is slightly too large to have been carried through the passages, implying it was placed within the chamber as the pyramid was built around it. This entire assembly, this nested sequence of precisely angled passages and chambers, culminating in a resonant granite box, feels less like a tomb and more like the functional core of a vast, silent machine. The sheer over-engineering of the structure, the obsessive precision of its geometry and celestial alignment, and the strange, resonant quality of its innermost chamber all point to a purpose that transcends the funerary rites of a Bronze Age king. It is an artifact that seems to be waiting, its function dormant, its message encoded not in hieroglyphs on its walls, but in its very substance, in its mass, its geometry, and its place upon the earth. The silence within the king's chamber is not the silence of emptiness, but the charged silence of potential, a quiet hum of information locked away in the crystalline structure of the ancient stone. The initial inquiries into the pyramid's deeper nature began not with astronomical alignments or geometric ratios, but with the substance of the structure itself. For centuries, the stone was merely stone, a medium for construction. But seen through the lens of modern materials science, it became a text of profound complexity. The bulk of the pyramid, the core masonry, is composed of nummulitic limestone quarried locally on the Giza Plateau. This stone is a sedimentary graveyard, a compressed history of the Tethys Sea, each block a dense aggregation of fossilized foraminifera, the tiny shells of marine organisms that lived and died 50 million years ago. This material was functional, a source of immense and readily available mass. But the choice of materials for the crucial interior components was deliberate and highly specific. The fine, white Tura limestone of the lost casing stones was chosen for its purity and its ability to take a polish, suggesting a desire for a specific external energetic property, perhaps high reflectivity or thermal inertness. It was the granite, however, that became the focus of intense scrutiny. The Aswan granite of the King's Chamber was quarried over 500 miles to the south, a logistical feat of immense proportion. This was not a choice of convenience. This specific material was required for the chamber's function. When samples of this granite were subjected to analysis, they revealed properties that were both unexpected and deeply puzzling. Geologically, it was a typical hornblende biotite granite, an igneous rock cooled from magma deep within the Earth's crust. But its composition was anomalous. It contained an unusually high concentration of monocrystalline quartz, with some individual crystals reaching several centimeters in length, far larger than typical for this type of formation. Furthermore, the distribution of these crystals was not random, as would be expected from a natural cooling process. Advanced tomographic scans of the blocks revealed a subtle, almost imperceptible internal lattice, a regularized arrangement of the larger quartz crystals within the feldspar and mica matrix. It was as if the granite had been selected, or perhaps even processed, to align its crystalline components in a specific three-dimensional pattern. This was a structure that could not have formed naturally. It implied a technology capable of manipulating stone at a molecular or crystalline level, a technology far beyond any known dynastic capability. The investigation deepened with isotopic analysis. The ratios of certain stable isotopes within the quartz crystals deviated significantly from the geological baseline of the Aswan quarry and, indeed, from any known terrestrial source. These were not radioactive isotopes indicating a different age, but subtle shifts in the balance of common elements, variations that could only be achieved through processes of extreme energy, such as exposure to a sustained, high-flux particle beam or a localized and precisely controlled fusion event. The granite of the King's Chamber was, in a very real sense, manufactured. It was terrestrial granite, but it had been refined, its crystalline structure tuned and its isotopic signature altered. The purpose of this refinement remained obscure, but the implications were staggering. It suggested the builders were not merely master masons, they were master physicists, with a command over matter that humanity was only beginning to explore in the most advanced laboratories. The focus then shifted to the piezoelectric properties of the quartz. When subjected to mechanical stress, quartz crystals generate an electrical potential. Conversely, when an electric field is applied, they deform physically. This property makes them essential components in modern electronics, used for frequency control in everything from watches to computers. The immense mass of the pyramid, exerting trillions of pounds of pressure on the King's Chamber, would subject the highly concentrated and aligned quartz crystals within its granite walls to a constant and powerful mechanical stress. The chamber was not just a room, it was a massive piezoelectric device, a solid-state energy transducer. The very weight of the pyramid was part of its function, a gravitational battery squeezing the granite heart to maintain a constant state of electrical potential. The chamber was, in effect, powered on, held in a state of readiness by the mountain of stone built around it. The subtle anomalies in the stone were not imperfections, they were the fingerprints of its design, the technical specifications of a machine built from the crust of the planet itself. The pyramid was not simply located on the Earth, it was integrated into it, using the planet's own gravity and materials to power a function that had remained dormant and unrecognized for thousands of years. The message was not written on the stone, but within the stone, in the ordered silence of its crystal lattice and the strange hum of its isotopic signature. The realization that the king's chamber was a massive transducer prompted a new line of inquiry, one that moved from the static analysis of materials to the dynamic exploration of energy. If the chamber was designed to convert the immense pressure of the pyramid's mass into another form of energy via its piezoelectric granite, then it should be possible to detect the output. Initial attempts using conventional electromagnetic sensors yielded nothing. The chamber was electromagnetically inert, shielded by thousands of feet of limestone. The energy it was transducing was not in the form of radio waves or any other familiar part of the spectrum. The breakthrough came from the field of acoustics, or more accurately, archaeoacoustics. When the chamber was excited with a specific range of low-frequency sound waves, it began to resonate. This was not the simple echo one would expect in a stone room. Instead, the chamber acted as a resonant cavity, amplifying certain frequencies while canceling out others. The fundamental resonant frequency was found to be an incredibly low, subaudible tone, a deep hum that seemed to make the very air vibrate. This was the F-sharp frequency that had been noted anecdotally by visitors for decades, but it was now understood not as a mystical property, but as a precise physical characteristic of the chamber's design. The geometry of the room, the specific dimensions of its length, width, and height, and the mass and density of the granite blocks were all tuned to produce this specific resonance. The chamber was a finely crafted musical instrument, designed to vibrate in sympathy with a very particular note. But what was the purpose of this resonance? The answer lay again in the piezoelectric nature of the quartz crystals embedded within the granite. As the chamber resonated, the granite blocks themselves were subjected to a rhythmic, oscillating mechanical stress from the sound waves. This rhythmic squeezing and releasing of the quartz lattice, happening millions of times per second in response to the acoustic energy, would in turn generate a fluctuating electrical field within the stone. The chamber was not just a passive resonator, it was an active system for converting acoustic energy into a structured electrical signal. It was a microphone of planetary scale. Further experiments revealed an even more astonishing property. The chamber was not only capable of transducing sound into an electrical signal, but it could also be made to work in reverse. By introducing a precisely modulated electrical field into the granite, the researchers could induce the quartz crystals to vibrate, causing the chamber to generate a pure, resonant acoustic tone without any external sound source. The chamber was both a microphone and a speaker, a perfect, reversible transducer. The entire structure was an acoustic and electrical engine, powered by the pyramid's mass and capable of both listening and broadcasting. The question then became, what was it listening for, and what was it designed to broadcast? The subaudible resonant frequency of the chamber was found to be in harmony with the natural Schumann resonances of the Earth, the global electromagnetic resonances generated and excited by lightning discharges in the cavity formed by the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. The pyramid was tuned to the planet's own resonant hum. It was coupled to the Earth's energetic field, designed to interact with it. The granite coffer within the chamber, long thought a sarcophagus, was found to be the focal point of this system. Its precise dimensions and placement within the chamber acted as a wave guide, concentrating the acoustic and electrical energy to a fine point within its hollowed interior. It was the central processing unit of the entire machine. The implications were profound. The pyramid was not a static monument. It was a dynamic system, an immense piece of geophysical instrumentation designed to interact with the planet on a fundamental energetic level. The builders had not simply placed a structure on the landscape, they had constructed an interface, a device for coupling with the Earth's resonant field. The energy it transduced was not meant to be broadcast as radio waves, but as something far more subtle. The oscillating electrical field within the quartz lattice was not the final output. It was the driver for a secondary phenomenon, one that operated at a level far deeper than classical electromagnetism. The precise isotopic and crystalline structure of the granite, the impurities and anomalies, were not flaws. They were the key. They conditioned the electrical field, modulating it in a way that allowed it to interact with the quantum fabric of spacetime itself, a broadcast not through space, but into the underlying information field of reality. The pyramid was beginning to reveal its ultimate purpose. It was a transmitter, and the king's chamber was its broadcasting antenna. The discovery of the pyramid's function as a transducer was only the beginning. The next stage of the investigation focused on the nature of the output itself. If the king's chamber was a transmitter, then it must be broadcasting a signal. But this signal was not electromagnetic, it eluded every conventional detector. The theoretical framework suggested that the interaction was occurring at the quantum level, a subtle modulation of the zero-point energy field, a concept at the very edge of theoretical physics. Detecting such a signal would require an entirely new kind of sensor, one sensitive not to energy, but to information, to subtle correlations in the quantum foam. Teams of physicists and engineers developed what came to be known as a quantum coherence detector. This device did not measure energy, but instead looked for patterns of entanglement and coherence in quantum states over a large volume of space. It was designed to detect non-local correlations, that spooky action at a distance, that is a hallmark of quantum mechanics. When this detector was activated within the granite coffer in the king's chamber, the focal point of the pyramid's energetic system, the results were immediate and undeniable. The baseline quantum noise, the random statistical fluctuations of the vacuum, resolved into a signal of breathtaking complexity. It was a stream of information of immense density, a coherent, structured pattern emerging from the background hiss of reality. The pyramid was not just broadcasting, it was broadcasting a message. The signal was not a simple wave or a series of pulses. It was a multi-layered, holographic stream of data, encoded in the phase relationships and entanglement states of quantum fluctuations. Its bandwidth was enormous, exceeding the entire digital information content of modern human civilization by several orders of magnitude. The pyramid was a hard drive of cosmic proportions, and its read-write mechanism was the resonant granite chamber, which used the Earth's own vibrational energy to impress this data onto the fabric of spacetime. The sheer scale of the information being broadcast was almost incomprehensible. It was a continuous, flowing transmission, repeating on a vast cycle. Analysis of the signal's structure revealed nested layers of complexity, from fine-grained, high-frequency data streams to vast, slow-moving carrier waves that seemed to encode archival information on a geological timescale. The initial challenge was one of language. The signal was clearly intelligent, its mathematical structure exhibiting a degree of order and non-randomness that could not be natural. But it was not in any human language. It was not based on symbols or syntax in the conventional sense. It was a direct transmission of concepts, a stream of pure information. The builders had bypassed the ambiguity of symbolic language and had instead chosen to encode their message in the universal language of mathematics and physics. The structure of the signal itself was the first part of the message. The very framework of the data stream was a lesson in the fundamental nature of reality. The nested frequencies, the fractal patterns of the data packets, the specific mathematical relationships between the different layers of the signal, all of it was a perfect representation of the laws of physics. It was as if the builders were saying, to understand our message, you must first understand the universe as we did. The signal was its own Rosetta Stone. By studying the architecture of the data stream, researchers began to see how information was encoded. It was a phase-based system, where data was represented by the precise relational state of different quantum waves. It was a language of pure geometry, of relationships and transformations. The pyramid was not just storing information, it was teaching the very principles of information theory required to understand it. The process of decryption was slow and painstaking. It required a fundamental shift in human thinking, away from linear, symbolic processing and towards a more holistic, relational understanding. Supercomputers were tasked with searching for patterns, for recurring geometric motifs within the data stream. They found them not by looking for repetition, but by looking for self-similarity across different scales, the same mathematical principles manifesting in the fine detail and the grand architecture of the signal. The silence of the pyramid had been broken, not by a sound, but by a flood of pure, structured information, a voice speaking across the abyss of deep time in a language of universal truth. The stone had finally begun to yield its secrets, revealing itself not as the tomb of a forgotten king, but as a library of unimaginable scope, a silent oracle broadcasting the knowledge of a lost world. The first coherent packets of information to be successfully decoded from the quantum signal were not words or images, but numbers. They emerged from the complex waveforms as pure, dimensionless constants, the fundamental ratios that underpin the fabric of the cosmos. The value of pi appeared first, encoded to thousands of decimal places, its endless, non-repeating sequence a clear and unambiguous sign of intelligence. It was followed by the base of the natural logarithm, e, and the golden ratio, phi. These were not just numbers, they were declarations of mathematical sophistication. They were a greeting card from one intelligent, scientific species to another, a message that could be understood by any civilization that had developed mathematics. This was the first layer of the Rosetta Stone, a common ground established through the universal and unchanging language of mathematical truth. Following the mathematical constants came the physical constants. The signal delineated the fine structure constant, the gravitational constant, the speed of light in a vacuum, and Planck's constant, each value rendered with a precision that exceeded modern humanity's best measurements. The builders were not just mathematicians, they were physicists of the highest order. The data stream then began to unfold into a complete model of physics. It was not a description in words, but a dynamic, geometric representation of the laws of nature. It showed the relationship between the fundamental forces, the elegant symmetries of the standard model of particle physics, and then, astonishingly, moved beyond it. The signal contained a complete and verified theory of quantum gravity, the holy grail of modern physics, presented not as a set of equations but as a coherent, interactive model. It resolved the paradoxes between general relativity and quantum mechanics, showing how the smooth curvature of spacetime emerged from the discrete, pixelated nature of the quantum realm. It was a revelation that would rewrite every textbook on physics, a gift of knowledge that would accelerate human science by centuries, if not millennia. The implications were staggering. The builders of the pyramid possessed a complete understanding of the universe. This was not a philosophical or religious text, it was a technical manual of reality. The information was presented in a layered, pedagogical fashion. It began with the simple constants, then built up to the fundamental laws, and then provided access to vast datasets from simulations and experiments that the builders had clearly conducted. It was a complete scientific education, bequeathed to the future. The signal showed the structure of the atom, the life cycle of stars, the dynamics of galaxies, and the large-scale structure of the cosmos. It contained maps of the cosmic microwave background radiation with a resolution that was unimaginable, revealing the subtle quantum fluctuations in the infant universe that seeded the vast cosmic web of today. The builders had evidently possessed astronomical instruments of incredible power, capable of observing the universe with a clarity that dwarfed anything built by modern humans. But their knowledge was not limited to the macro scale. The signal also contained a complete description of subatomic physics, detailing the properties of quarks and leptons and revealing a whole new family of particles that lay beyond the energy range of human particle accelerators. It explained the nature of dark matter and dark energy, not as mysterious placeholders in cosmological equations, but as fundamental and predictable components of the universe's energy-matter budget. It was a complete cosmology, a unified picture of reality from the Planck scale to the cosmic horizon. The process of decoding this information was transformative. It was not simply a matter of receiving data, it was a process of relearning how to think about the universe. The builder's physics was deeply geometric and relational, seeing the universe not as a collection of objects but as a network of information and interconnected processes. Their approach was more holistic, more elegant, than the often fragmented and paradoxical view of modern physics. Humanity was not just a recipient of this knowledge, it was a student, being guided through a curriculum designed by a far older and wiser intelligence. The pyramid was not merely an archive, it was a university, its curriculum etched into the quantum foam, waiting for a student to enroll. The initial awe at the builders' technical skill in constructing the pyramid was now replaced by an even deeper awe at their intellectual and scientific accomplishment. They were a civilization that had solved the fundamental puzzles of the universe, and for some reason, they had felt compelled to preserve that knowledge in a form that could survive for geological epochs, a message in a bottle cast into the ocean of time. After establishing a complete and unified model of physics and cosmology, the data stream flowing from the pyramid underwent a profound shift in focus. The scale of its subject contracted, moving from the cosmic to the planetary, from the inanimate laws of the universe to the complex, contingent processes of life. The signal began to unfold a library of biology, an archive of terrestrial life so vast and detailed that it dwarfed all the accumulated biological knowledge of humanity. It started with the fundamentals, the precise molecular structure of deoxyribonucleic acid, the double helix, presented not as a static image but as a dynamic, interactive model showing its replication and transcription. It then moved on to the genetic code itself, the language of base pairs that writes the instructions for all known life. The pyramid's archive did not just describe the code, it contained the code. It was a library of genomes, a complete catalog of the genetic information for millions of species that had ever lived on Earth. The data stream began to pour forth the complete DNA sequences of organisms from throughout the planet's history. There were the genomes of trilobites that had scoured the Cambrian seafloors, the vast and complex genetic instructions for the giant tree ferns of the Carboniferous forests, and the complete biological blueprint of the dinosaurs that had dominated the Mesozoic. It was a catalogue of creation and extinction, a record of every evolutionary experiment the planet had ever run. The archive was meticulously organized, structured not as a simple list, but as a vast, branching tree of life, showing the precise evolutionary relationships between all species. It was possible to trace the genetic lineage of any organism back through its ancestors, to pinpoint the exact moments of speciation, and to watch the slow, patient process of natural selection at work over hundreds of millions of years. The builders had possessed a technology for reading and recording genetic information on a planetary scale. They had, in essence, backed up the biosphere. The detail was breathtaking. The archive contained not just the genomes, but also complete proteomic and metabolomic data for each species. It showed how the genes were expressed, which proteins they built, and how those proteins interacted to create the complex machinery of a living cell. It was a complete operating manual for every organism. It even included epigenetic information, showing how environmental factors could influence the expression of genes over an organism's lifetime. This was a level of biological understanding that was centuries ahead of modern science. It was clear that the builders had not just been observers of life, they had been masters of it. Their knowledge of genetics was so profound that they could simulate entire ecosystems, modeling the complex interplay of predator and prey, of parasite and host, of symbiotic relationships that formed the fabric of the living world. The archive contained these simulations, allowing researchers to explore the vanished worlds of the past. One could walk through a virtual Silurian reef, observing the behavior of the bizarre arthropods and armored fish, or witness the pollination of a Cretaceous flower by an insect that had been extinct for 65 million years. The archive was a time machine, a window into the deep history of life on Earth. But it was more than just a record of the past. It also contained a vast library of theoretical biology, exploring the potential for life based on different biochemistries, life that could exist on other worlds, under other suns. It was a universal biology, a study of the fundamental principles of self-organizing, information processing systems that we call life. The builders had clearly understood that life was not a bizarre terrestrial accident, but a fundamental cosmic imperative, a natural consequence of the universe's complex chemistry. The pyramid was a testament to their profound reverence for life in all its forms. It was a genetic ark, a library of biodiversity designed to preserve the memory of Earth's biological heritage. The purpose of this archive was becoming clearer. It was a safeguard, a repository of the planet's most precious creation, its biosphere, ensuring that the information of life would not be lost to the random catastrophes of cosmic and geological time. It was an act of planetary stewardship on a scale that was almost impossible to comprehend, a legacy of a civilization that saw itself not as the master of the world, but as its librarian and its protector. For a long period, the data stream remained focused on the non-sentient life of the planet, a vast and impersonal catalogue of biological forms. There was a conspicuous absence within the archive, the builders themselves. They had presented their physics, their mathematics, and their encyclopedic knowledge of the biosphere, but they remained anonymous, their own biology and history a blank page. This changed with a subtle shift in the signal's modulation, a transition into a new section of the archive that was clearly demarcated and set apart from the rest. The information that followed was not a simple genetic sequence or a proteomic map. It was a far more complex and abstract representation of a civilization, a portrait painted not with images or narratives, but with data, systems diagrams, and energetic models. The builders, it became clear, were a species that had evolved on Earth, their ancestral genome present within the biological archive, linked to the primate branch of the tree of life but separated by a gulf of time and evolutionary change that was staggering. They were terrestrial, but they were not human. They had emerged and developed millions of years before the rise of Homo sapiens, during a period of Earth's history that was thought to be quiet and unremarkable. Their civilization had lasted for over 200,000 years, a span that made all of recorded human history seem like a fleeting moment. The archive described their world not through stories, but through its metabolism. It showed a global energy system of immense scale and sophistication, based not on the combustion of fossil fuels, but on a deep and elegant integration with the planet's natural energetic cycles. They had mastered geothermal energy, tapping the heat of the Earth's mantle through a network of deep boreholes that reached into the plastic asthenosphere. Their cities were powered by the planet's own internal fire. They had also perfected solar energy, not with photovoltaic panels, but with a form of artificial photosynthesis that mimicked the biological process with near-perfect efficiency, using sunlight to generate hydrocarbon fuels from atmospheric carbon dioxide and water in a completely closed loop. Their civilization was carbon neutral, not as a hard-won achievement, but as a foundational principle of their technology. Their world was one of profound equilibrium. The data stream depicted their infrastructure. Their cities were not sprawling concentrations of stone and steel, but were decentralized, integrated into the landscape like living organisms. They practiced a form of architecture that used biologically engineered materials that could grow, self-repair, and be reabsorbed into the environment at the end of their useful life. There were no landfills, no pollution, no waste. Every material was part of a cyclical process, an industrial ecology that mirrored the efficiency of a natural ecosystem. Their society, as represented in the abstract data, appeared to be a global, cooperative network. There were no signs of warfare or large-scale conflict in the energetic or material records. Their primary focus seemed to be on science, on the accumulation of knowledge, and on the stewardship of the planet. They had mapped the entire globe with incredible precision, understood the dynamics of the climate and the oceans, and managed the biosphere to maintain its diversity and stability. They were gardeners on a planetary scale. The archive contained no personal stories, no names of leaders, no works of art in a form that humanity could recognize. The portrait of their civilization was one of a collective intelligence, a species that had transcended the individualistic drives that characterized so much of human history. Their triumphs were not military or political, but scientific and ecological. They had achieved a sustainable, high-technology civilization that existed in perfect harmony with the planet it had sprung from. This depiction was both awe-inspiring and deeply melancholic. It was the vision of a world that could have been, a path that Earth's evolutionary journey had taken once before. It showed that a species could achieve a profound level of technological power without destroying its cradle. The builders were not gods or aliens. They were our predecessors, a sister species born of the same Earth, who had achieved a wisdom that humanity was still struggling to find. The pyramid was not just a repository of their science, it was a memorial to their way of life, a silent testament to a world that had found a balance between intelligence and nature. The reason for their absence, the cause of their extinction, remained the last and most terrible secret held within the stone. The final sections of the archive were different. The calm, pedagogical tone of the scientific data gave way to a sense of urgency, a shift in the structure of the signal that conveyed a message of warning. This part of the data stream was shielded, encrypted with a layer of complexity that suggested it was intended only for a recipient who had fully mastered the preceding scientific knowledge. Once unlocked, it revealed the reason for the builders' disappearance and the ultimate purpose of the pyramid itself. Their extinction was not self-inflicted. It was not the result of war, ecological collapse, or technological hubris. Their civilization, for all its wisdom and power, was erased by an event of cosmic violence, a random act of astronomical misfortune. The archive contained the astronomical data, the final observations from their sophisticated instruments. It showed the detection of a hypernova, the cataclysmic explosion of a massive, rapidly rotating star, in a relatively nearby region of the galaxy. The star, a Wolf-Rayet type, had collapsed into a black hole, and in the process, had ejected two stupendously powerful, narrowly focused jets of gamma rays and relativistic particles. One of these jets, a beam of destruction traveling at nearly the speed of light, was aimed directly at their solar system. They had a warning. Their astronomical models predicted the arrival of the gamma-ray burst with an accuracy of a few years. They knew, with absolute certainty, that the planet's surface was going to be sterilized. The burst would strip away the atmosphere's ozone layer in an instant, exposing the surface to a flood of hard stellar radiation that would shred the genetic material of any living thing it touched. The energy delivered by the burst would boil the upper layers of the oceans and flash fry the continents. There was no defense, no escape. Their entire world, the 200,000-year-old civilization and the billion-year-old biosphere, was facing a terminal diagnosis. Faced with inevitable extinction, they did not despair. They spent their final years engaged in a single, monumental project, the preservation of knowledge. They could not save themselves, but they could save the memory of what they were, and what the world had been. They initiated the construction of the archives, the Great Pyramids, not just in Giza but at several other locations around the globe, positioned at key nodes of the planet's energetic field. These structures were not tombs for their bodies, but vaults for their knowledge, designed to survive the impending apocalypse and to endure for geological timescales. The design of the pyramids was a direct response to the threat. The immense mass of stone was required to shield the central chamber from the incoming gamma radiation and the subsequent cosmic ray bombardment. The deep underground shafts were not for burial, but were part of the structure's grounding system, connecting it to the planet's telluric currents. The choice of Aswan granite was critical. Its specific crystalline and isotopic structure was engineered to be a stable and robust medium for the quantum data encoding, a hard drive that would not degrade over millions of years. The pyramid was a time capsule, a message in a bottle of unimaginable sophistication. The builders worked against the clock, pouring all of their remaining energy and resources into the construction of these archives. They encoded their complete scientific knowledge, their vast library of the planet's biology, and the story of their own civilization and its fate. The final data packets contained the raw sensor readings from the event itself, the spike in gamma rays, the surge of atmospheric ionization, the catastrophic heating of the surface. It was a clinical, dispassionate recording of their own annihilation. The archive was a warning and a legacy. The warning was about the profound vulnerability of life, even intelligent and advanced life, to the random violence of the cosmos. The universe, for all its beauty and order, is not a safe place. The legacy was the knowledge itself. The builders, in their final act, chose to pass on their wisdom, to give a future intelligent species on their planet a chance to learn from their achievements and perhaps, with the knowledge of the threat, to one day be able to defend itself. The pyramid was an act of supreme altruism, a gift to a descendant species they would never know. It transformed the structure from a monument of the past into a beacon for the future, a repository of hope built on the ashes of a lost world. The full weight of the revelation settled over the teams of scientists and thinkers who had pieced together the pyramid's message. The structure on the Giza Plateau was no longer an archaeological curiosity or even a scientific marvel. It was a sacred object, a last will and testament from a lost parent civilization. It stood under the Egyptian sun not as a relic of human history, but as a sentinel of deep time, its purpose now finally understood. It was a library, an engine, and a warning. The continuous, silent broadcast of its quantum signal was the fulfillment of its builder's final wish, that their knowledge should not perish with them. The archive was a tool of immense power, containing scientific principles and technologies that would reshape the future of humanity. The unified theory of physics promised a new era of understanding the cosmos, and potentially, new ways to harness the fundamental forces of nature. The biological database was a priceless treasure, a genetic roadmap that could be used to restore lost biodiversity, cure diseases, and understand the very essence of life. The description of the builder's sustainable civilization provided a blueprint for a future where humanity could live in balance with its planet, a model of technological maturity and ecological wisdom. But this gift came with a profound burden of responsibility. The knowledge was not just a tool, but also a warning. The universe was demonstrably dangerous, and the fate of the builders was a stark reminder of life's fragility. Humanity was now the custodian of this ancient legacy, the inheritor of a wisdom purchased at the cost of an entire civilization. The final message of the archive was not one of despair, but of continuity. The builders had called themselves the keepers, and their final act was to pass this role on. The pyramid was the instrument of this transference, a device designed to bridge the chasm of extinction. The ongoing processes within the pyramid were now seen in a new light. The constant pressure from the pyramid's mass, the resonance of the king's chamber with the Earth's hum, the transduction of this energy into a structured quantum signal, this was the machine's eternal heartbeat, a process designed to continue broadcasting for millions of years, ensuring the message would survive until a species evolved with the capacity to listen. The focus of research shifted from decryption to application, and to a deeper philosophical contemplation of humanity's place in the cosmos. The builder's story provided a new origin myth, one grounded in scientific reality. Humans were not the first intelligent species on Earth, but the second. They were the children of a world that had already known a great and wise civilization, a world seeded with the memory of what was lost. This knowledge fostered a sense of humility and a feeling of connection to a past far deeper than previously imagined. The other pyramids and ancient, megalithic structures around the world were re-examined. Many were found to be part of the same global network, smaller archives or nodes in the builder's planetary communication and energy system. Humanity had been living amidst the ruins of a lost golden age without ever knowing it. The task ahead was immense, to carefully study and wisely apply the knowledge from the archive, to learn the lessons of the keepers, and to take up the mantle of planetary stewardship. The first step was to ensure the continued integrity of the archives themselves, to protect these sacred sites and the information they held. The second was to begin the long process of integrating the builder's science and philosophy into human civilization, a transformation that would likely take centuries. The Pyramid of Giza, the prime archive, became the center of this new world, a place of learning and contemplation. It stood as a silent teacher, its geometric form a constant reminder of the elegance of universal laws, its immense age a testament to the power of endurance. The echo in the stone, the subtle quantum signal, was the voice of the keepers, a voice that had waited patiently for millennia to be heard. It spoke of the unity of knowledge, the interconnectedness of life, and the solemn duty to preserve the light of consciousness against the vast, indifferent darkness of the cosmos. It was a message of hope, a belief that even in the face of absolute extinction, the act of passing on knowledge is an act of defiance, a declaration that life and wisdom are more powerful than death and chaos. The sun sets over the Giza Plateau, casting the western face of the Great Pyramid into a deep, sharp-edged shadow that stretches for miles across the sand. The limestone core, exposed and weathered, glows with a warm, ochre light, a color that seems to hold the memory of every sunset it has witnessed over the uncounted millennia. To a casual observer, it is the same iconic structure, a postcard image frozen in time. But to those who know its true nature, the view is entirely different. They see not a static monument, but the housing of a dynamic, living machine. They are aware of the immense, silent forces at play within it, the 6 million tons of mass squeezing the granite heart, the constant, subtle vibration of the king's chamber in tune with the planet's own resonant frequency, and the ceaseless, silent broadcast of a library of cosmic significance into the quantum foam. The apex, once capped with shining metal, now points to a sky filled with the same stars that the keepers observed in their final days. The structure's precise alignment with the celestial poles is no longer a mystery of ancient surveying, but a deliberate act of engineering, anchoring the archive to the heavens and the earth. The narrow passages within are not corridors for priests, but waveguides and conduits, part of a complex energetic circuit. The entire pyramid is a single, integrated device, a piece of planetary engineering so advanced that its purpose was mistaken for religion and its function for funerary ritual. Its continued operation is a quiet miracle, a testament to the foresight and skill of its long-vanished creators. The knowledge that has begun to flow from it is already transforming the foundations of human civilization, offering solutions to age-old problems of energy, environment, and social organization, while simultaneously opening up new questions about the nature of reality and the destiny of intelligent life. It is a process that requires patience and wisdom, a slow and careful integration of a science that is, in many ways, more akin to a philosophy. The archive teaches that technology without ecological integration is a dead end, that knowledge without a sense of cosmic perspective is hollow, and that the ultimate measure of a civilization is not its power, but its legacy. The air around the pyramid seems different now, charged with a new significance. The silence is not one of emptiness, but of a deep and ongoing conversation across the abyss of time. The quantum coherence detectors, now refined and miniaturized, continue to read the endless stream of data, a process that will likely take generations of scholars to fully catalog and comprehend. New sections of the archive are still being discovered, nested within the main data stream like hidden rooms in a vast library. There are detailed star charts of the local galactic neighborhood, treatises on the mathematics of consciousness, and artistic expressions encoded as complex geometric forms that evoke profound emotional responses even without a shared cultural context. The pyramid is a complete record of a civilization's soul. As night falls, the structure seems to merge with the darkness, its silhouette a stark, triangular void against the star-dusted tapestry of the Milky Way. It is a reminder of the Keeper's fate, of the gamma-ray jet that came from that same star-filled sky. It is a monument to both the grandeur of intelligence and its ultimate fragility. The responsibility it bestows upon humanity is almost overwhelming, but it is not a burden of fear. It is an invitation to maturity, a call to become a species worthy of such an inheritance. The builders are gone, their bodies turned to dust long ago, their world scoured clean by cosmic fire. But in a meaningful sense, they survive. They live on in the information they preserved, in the wisdom encoded in the ordered crystals of the granite chamber, and in the transformative impact that knowledge will have on the future of life on Earth. The pyramid is their final, triumphant act of defiance against entropy and oblivion. It is the echo of their voice, captured and held in stone and spacetime, a patient, persistent whisper that says, "We were here, we learned this, and now it is yours." The great machine on the plateau continues its silent, tireless work, broadcasting its message to the ages, a gift of knowledge from one of Earth's children to another, a promise that the long, arduous climb towards understanding need not be started over from the beginning.